What's going on, everybody? We have the meta snapshot update for patch 13.1b. There was a slight B patch, and I did a summary on it earlier this week, so you guys can check that out in your own free time. But let's just jump right into the summary. In the S tier, we have, no surprise, mech comps are still dominating right now. For Ace Mech, Kaisa Recon, Oxforce Viego, Samira Mech, MF Mech, Duelist, Camille Reroll, and then Anima Misfortune is going to round the S tier out. Onto the A tier, we have Lasercorps, Draven, Talon Reroll, Leblanc Threats. That's a new comp of the week. Vertical Star Guardian, Spellslinger, Taliyah. Both versions are fine. Yuumi, Threats, Soraka Admin, Jax, Sureshot Reroll, and then Wukong. Wukong Reroll, I think, is like sleeper OP right now because it's definitely stronger than 2-star set. And it's just a little hard to get, but the games you do get it, you're going to be rocking and rolling. Onto the B tier, Gangplank Supers. I wouldn't really bother with the B tier too much this week. Zoe Reroll, Brawler Ashe, Lulu Reroll, Kayle Reroll, Nasus Reroll, and then Duelist Reroll. If you get like the champion augments for it, then like great. Go for it and have a blast. But if not, like just stick with the tried and true S and A tiers because those are going to be your go-tos in 96% of games. I'm making that up. But a lot of them. But let's get into how to play every single one of these team compositions. So Set was nerfed. Like, I'm not going to deny that. He was nerfed, but does that mean he is bad? Nope. He's still the most dominating comp. This is both data-wise. This is both like tried and true-wise based on like what the top players are playing. It's just any variation of Set plus damage dealer, the most popular one being for Ace. That's going to be dominating the patch. The reason why the Ace units work out so well is because you could just play them without the 4 Ace and they'll do fine on their own, but if you manage to hit all 4 Aces, kind of like poker, I guess, the hand just becomes a lot better, or the comp becomes a lot better. He's also just the strongest frontline in the game. You just need 3 units, right? Wukong, Set, and then another Mecha Prime. Compare that to other comps such as like Sejuani, Echo, Alistair, or something like that, or Vibe, Sejuani, Echo. Which one's tankier? It's going to be the Set, so that's why it's so strong, because he's just the combined tankiness of more than 3 units, and he only costs 3 units on your board. One mistake I see a lot of players making with the 4 Ace Mech build is people focus a lot on Samira, but you really just need to focus on MF. When you play 4 Aces, Samira isn't that important. Like sure, if you get a lot of attack damage items, you kind of have to put them on her. But you're never aiming for that. You're aiming to itemize MF first, and then if you happen to get unlucky and get no MF items and are forced to build Samira items, that's when you put them on her. But a mistake I see a lot of people playing, they're like, oh, I hit 2-star Samira, but I only have 1-star MF. Let's build up my Samira. I'd say that's like a slight mistake because MF, again, is a real star of the comp. But you guys can check out all the in-depth details on how to play each and every one of these comps on my website, BunnyMuffins.lol/meta. We go over augments, what the core is, items for every champion, and like item holders in the early game, requirements that you need, how to play it. So definitely check that out in your spare time. Onto the next build, we have Kaisa Recon. This is my go-tos like every now and then. It's just hard to play. Not in terms of a skill sense, but in terms of you need good openers for this. You can check out my like 3-hour guide or 2-hour guide on it over here, and you'll notice that I use a lot of like big econ openers in order to play this comp, and you really need a big econ for the recon comp because you need 3 cost 3 stars, and those are really hard to hit in a timely fashion, and you need to stabilize your board early so you don't die out before you can hit it. So that's why this comp is a little tricky, but once you get the hang of it, once you get like maybe 3 games of it, you'll be playing it as if it was on the back of your hand or something like that. So again, like full guide is over here. Nothing's changed even though it was on a different patch, and I play it the same exact way. And there are a couple of different versions. The way I play it is I like having Kaisa, Vayne, Ezreal, Ashe, and then double Rammus, double Cho'Gath. But the one you see here, this one was made by Void Sin. He likes the Star Guardian version, Nyla, and Echo. There's always more than one way to fry a fish, and TFT is no exception to that rule, you know? I've even seen some people, they prioritize itemizing their Vayne over their Kaisa, which I find to be completely crazy, but other people, high-level players, they make it work. So as long as you know what to do for your specific strategy, you're going to be doing fine. It's just a matter of following it and executing it. So for me, I prefer the Kaisa with the threat version and not running the Star Guardian Duelist package. I also like running 4 Recon, but other players, they like doing it in their own ways, and all of them work. You just need to stick to the game plan of your version. And if you want to shine even higher, you would find situations to go each of the different versions and kind of just mix and match them instead of tunnel visioning on one of those builds. But onto the next build, we have Oxforce Viego. I thought he would be the strongest comp, but then I realized Set is just so tanky, so it doesn't matter. But Viego's still very, very, very close to the top. There are a couple of different ways to build him. People are prioritizing Hextech Gunblade the most now. It used to be Ionic Spark, but that's a little out of fashion now, so Hextech Gunblade is now the most go-to item. And then you have to keep in mind you need a secondary carry when you play Viego. In this picture you see here, we have 6 Oxforce, 3 Renegade. That's going to be your core, but you could also go for 6 Renegade if you get a Renegade spat, or you could Oxforce spat someone as well. So spatulas are extremely good in the Viego comp. You just have to keep in mind, again, you need a secondary carry. It doesn't have to be Fiddlesticks though. Like, he's very expensive and you don't always get him in your game, but you might be wondering, like, who else can do it? You could do stuff like Misfortune, you could do stuff like Aurelion Soul, you could even do something like Belveth. Literally any 4 cost or 5 cost damage dealer, if you have the right items for them and like a spatula to help them out, all of them can secondary carry. Hell, it doesn't even have to be any of those. It could be like the Leona that you hit eventually. But pretty much you just focus on Viego items, some support items, maybe you reroll Talon and then went into Viego later, and then just secondary carry, just pretty much utility items on everyone else, and you'll be good to go. So again, Fast 8 is probably the best way to do this, but it really depends on your game. Again, we have a really expensive team comp out here. We have like 3 legendaries and 1 4-cost unit, so it is pretty expensive, but you don't always have to follow the same game plan every single game. Maybe I'll try to do like a Viego 2-hour compilation sometime, maybe next week or something like that. We'll have to see, because I'm finding a lot more success on other comps, but this comp definitely is really strong. Just because I don't play it doesn't mean it's bad. You have to recognize what other people are doing, and it's really working out for like the majority of the population. I just haven't figured out the best way to make it work yet. Again, Voidson, this is the way he likes to play it, so we can definitely learn from that too. On to the next build, we have Samira Mech. So Samira is like, yeah, you need Sureshot with her, so this is very similar to the Ace build. And all these different mech builds, they're all variations of one another, you know? But if you do Samira, you definitely need Sureshot. Fitting her in 4 Ace, you can still play her in 4 Aces, but you need to have Sureshot with her. And sometimes there's just not enough room for that. Unless you get like an Ace Spatula or something like that, it's pretty hard to fit. Great news about her though is that with Sureshots, you can fit in a lot of extra units. So here, the extra units are Sejuani, Urgot, and Fiddlesticks. They could literally be anything. You could run 4 Sureshot. You can run like different legendaries. You could run like Aegises or more defenders depending on what lobby you're facing. But you play it the same as all the other mech builds. So you need to, again, like roll a lot on level 8. And level 7 is a little bit iffy, but sometimes you're forced to do that. But because the comp is so expensive, you see a lot of players, they never hit set 2, they're perma-stuck set 1 or perma-stuck Samira 1. The reason why is because they didn't econ properly, and that's part of the trickiness of this build, I think. For items on Samira, the most important item, I wouldn't even play this build without a Last Whisper. Everyone's playing set, so they have Defender. Defender gives armor, so if you don't have a Last Whisper or some way to reduce armor, you're not going to go very far in life. After that, like damage item, IE is pretty good. Any AD item's good. Runon's, Deathblade. And then one healing item does a lot for Samira, because if she gets popped by some random AoE, Set's tankiness means nothing. But having some form of sustain on her means that there's a pretty good chance she'll live to a lot of random spells hitting her. And when that happens, the tankiness of Set just becomes very accentuated, and it really buys her a lot of time to just stack up Sureshot stacks and then just blow everyone up at the end of the fight. So that's pretty much how this build is working. Again, more details on the website, BunnyMuffins.lol. And if you guys are enjoying this rundown so far, feel free to hit the like button down below, because it helps me a lot with YouTube algorithm, and just because it helps promote the video. It'll encourage me to make more content, and also subscribe below if you are not already. We're almost at 100K subscribers, so that'd be pretty cool if I got that sometime soon. But onto the next build, we have Misfortune Mech, played out very similarly. You guys notice the similarities? Everything's even in the same position, but we swapped out Aphelios for Bel'Veth, and I think that's it. Yeah, and then the Samira for MF. So Bel'Veth can literally be anyone. Again, you could be double Urgot, double Fiddlesticks, double Sejuani, literally anything, because MF is a little more low maintenance than Samira. She doesn't require having like a trait synergy because she just doesn't have that other trait. But she does need something like a Spear of Shojin to generate mana, similar to how Samira needs the Last Whisper. So that's the one difference between them, but it's pretty much the same build. So if you're going for set, you build the defensive items first, and then whatever drops on your neutral camps, if it's AP items, you go MF. If it's AD items, you go for Samira. That's kind of how you pick and choose whenever you play the mech comps. Mech comps, for me, I don't really play them that much quite yet. I should, but I'm just not good at the econ portion of the game. I'm much better at playing all the AP comps, so I released like a 2-hour video on that recently, so I'll leave a card here if you guys are interested in that, where I pretty much climbed playing off-meta stuff, but all the mech comps right now are all S tier and super, super powerful. Onto the Duelists. So Duelists, it's a little hit or miss. They really depend on the strength of your lobby. You know how some games, for some reason, everyone's just like not hitting anything? In those games, Duelists are extremely strong. But there's other games where like everyone is 2-star everything on stage 4-1 after they roll down. That's when Duelists are super weak. So it's a little bit of a hit or miss comp, but it's still decent to play in certain situations if you get the right starts for it. So if you get like a nice Locket at the start with like a 4 Duelist opener in stage 2, this comp is like really, really strong still. But I wouldn't force this build like I would on previous patches because it's not as powerful as it was before, and other comps are just better at dealing with this right now. One good thing about this comp is that you can bypass the sets a lot. Set's super tanky, right? But if you kill their damage dealer with Hacker, it's much more manageable, and you could do that with Zed. So he could jump to the back, kill the backline, and then you can like 5v1 the set, and hopefully sometimes you win. Sometimes you'll still lose, don't get me wrong, but like more often than not, you'll win if it's an actual 5v1. So that's really the strength of this comp. And there are a couple ways to play this. Before we played this really aggressively, but now you kind of want to stabilize more so at level 7, less at level 6. Like you still want to stabilize at level 6, but you don't want to roll down as aggressively as you did before. That's kind of like the difference I've been noticing so far, at least. Next build up we have is Camille Reroll. So Camille, if you get a good augment for it, or if you get a very good admin for her, then she is like S+ tier, you know, but you also have to hit it. If not, if you're just forcing Camille without a good admin and like without the carry augment, then she's like very mediocre. But that's kind of like the tricky part of this build, so always try to check your admin early. She is at the bottom of the S tier, but like it's mainly because she's a reroll comp. You can't always go for her, but when you do get her, she is very powerful. That's why she's kind of up here. Misfortune Anima Squad is the next build we're going to go into. This one, I personally really like it. It is the bunny trait after all, so when I do get the chance to play it, I try to do so. MF is going to be your primary carry, Vayne is a great stabilizer, and then Riven's going to be your main tank. A couple of different ways to play this. You could play around the MF and go for level 8, add in a bunch of expensive units, or you can play for the reroll version of Riven 3, Vayne 3. In that case, you want real items on Vayne, Last Whisper, maybe a Rage Blade, Giant Slayer, Guard Breaker, things like that. But the one requirement of this comp to really make it shine is getting Anima Squad on early levels with upgrades, because if you could get stacks during stage 2, it just makes it easier to get stacks on stage 3, which makes it easier to get, like, you guys get the point. It just snowballs onto itself, and it just gets completely out of control sometimes. Misfortune's items are the same as always, Spear of Shojin plus 2 damage items. I don't really think it matters what items you put on Misfortune after Spear of Shojin, so just slam whatever you have available. For Riven, just any generic tank items will do. And then you also have like a couple of flex spots, like Fiddle could be anything, Sejuani could be anything as well. It's just dependent on what you hit. You really just want the 5 Anima plus Echo for Prankster and then go from there. Onto the A tier. So A tiers are pretty solid, and there are quite a few comps here. And mainly I'm just playing A tier as I'm climbing, but that's just based on my playstyle. You always got to find what works for you. But first things first, we're going to start off with Lasercorps Zed. This is probably the strongest A tier comp right now because Lasercorps, they have this very high cap out whenever you get to 9 Lasercorps. It just requires a little bit of luck, but when you do win out like that, it's just guaranteed top 2, if not top 1. And the best part about it is once you get to 9 Lasercorps, it doesn't matter what any other items you have. It doesn't matter like what units you have. You just need the 9 Lasercorps and then you're going to be good to go. It's just a bit situational, which makes it like kind of a hit or miss. The 6 Lasercorps version, is it good? What does it actually average? Probably something like average to below average. But again, just because of the chance for the 9 Lasercorps win out, it makes this comp really, really powerful. And you kind of stabilize at level 7 and go for 6 Lasercorps there. So it's not like the worst thing in the world. It's just there are better comps. And if you don't hit the 9 Lasercorps plus the Mordekaiser, it loses like a lot more power. It's like one comp is B tier, the other one's S++ tier. So it's kind of like that. Draven Reroll, this one's very popular right now, and some people are just like hard forcing it. I think like Robin Songs is a big Draven player, and the way you play it, you just do 2-cost reroll, focusing on Draven plus the supers, Lee Sin, Malphite primarily, and ideally you itemize Lee Sin as your tank, but sometimes it's Malphite if you have him 3-star and you don't have Lee Sin 3, but you just do that at level 6, slow roll for Draven to everyone. Stabilize first, obviously, and then slow roll for 3 stars after that, and then that's pretty much all you have to play there. Next build up we have is the Talon Reroll. So Talon Reroll, very, very annoying to play against, because what ends up happening is that a lot of opponents end up positioning against you, and then they don't face you, and then they lose out to the other people that they're facing, because they think they're gonna have to position against the Talon, but they just face something else. It's really funny. I'm not sure how much that mechanic actually helps out the Talon Reroll player, because again, people will position for you, especially the higher up you go. Maybe at levels where people don't really scout much, this comp is even stronger, because if you don't position for this, you just take like a 10 unit loss pretty much every time, because Talon 1-taps your backline carry. So I guess it isn't really like a noob comp, but it's definitely like more punishing at lower elos, I feel. And in higher elos, when everyone's scouting, they kind of grief themselves when they position against the Talon, because sometimes it makes their matchups against everyone else they could potentially face a bit worse. But yeah, that's kind of like the weird mechanic with this comp. But it's just a simple 1-cost reroll. You just go for Talon 3. You don't need the hero augment, because you could always play Talon and then have Viego secondary carry later on. And just like the other build, there are a lot of different variations you could try to play here. Next build up, we have LeBlanc Threats. This is a new comp of the week, and this one revolves around 3-cost reroll. It's kind of similar to Kaisa Recon reroll, because you go for like 3-cost units and the threats. You're also going for the threats. You're also going for like other 3-cost units, Sona and Zoe. So they're both very similar to each other. You just play this like a standard 3-cost reroll comp. You play strongest board, try to build an econ, because that's really important for those types of builds. And then at level 7, you stabilize your board and then start slow rolling at level 7 to get LeBlanc 3, everyone like 3 costs to 3-star. And that's pretty much all you have to do. We have a little more like details on the leveling patterns over here, based on like if your HP is high or low and what items you need. But overall, like the build kind of plays very similar to the Kaisa Recon build. Next build up we have is the Vertical Star Guardian and the Taliyah carry build. They're kind of like paired between each other, because there's so many different versions of Taliyah. Again, I made a 2-hour AP video yesterday, so definitely check that out, because that will detail pretty much everything you need to know about Star Guardian, Taliyah, Spellslinger, and the Heart build with Soraka, because you have 2 outs essentially. Is it the best comp? No. This comp gets outshined by all the Misfortunes, the Sets, the Viegos, pretty much all those comps, and I'm including the Soraka comp here as well. And is that an issue? Yes and no. When everyone's going for the same comp, not everyone's gonna hit. If they do all hit, that's just unlucky that game. Just play the next game. But a lot of cases they won't hit, and you're pretty much guaranteed to hit a good Taliyah or Soraka board. And because of that, you're able to get top 3s, top 4s. Worst case, it's like a top 5. And you kind of just balance around that area. That's how I've been playing right now. That's how I've been like kind of climbing. But again, check out that 2-hour video from yesterday if you want like to actually climb with these comps, because that's like my bread and butter right now. Yummi Reroll is still pretty powerful. It sneaks out a lot of wins, and the reason why the data for Yuumi looks pretty bad is because some people still play like the mascot version, and that one is really bad. Just don't play the mascot version at all. Play the one with Nyla and Star Guardian. So it kind of plays out the same, but you're able to stabilize a little earlier so you don't lose too much HP, and you don't need to roll at level 5 anymore. You just focus on rolling at level 6, and then you're going to be good to go from there. Get Malphite, Lee Sin 3, Yuumi 3, sometimes Rel 3, and then after that you focus on Nyla. This build is pretty powerful. You do need to position your Yuumi to hit their backline carries, but apart from that, that's really all you have to worry about. Onto the threat build, this is just the generic threat board. You could do Ace Carry, Bel'Veth Carry, ideally both, and then Fiddlesticks to cap you off later on, or Urgot. Both of those are really strong options, and the items, they matter a little bit, but not like that much. You just need attack speed, attack damage items on the Bel'Veth, like generic AD, AS. So whatever you're building for Samira, let's say you don't hit the Samira, you hit like a nice threat augment, and then you could go transfer all those items onto Bel'Veth. Let's say you're going for Misfortune, let's say you're going for Viego, like Acel can use those items if you manage to get the threat option. It's never your first choice, but if you are going for like one of the meta comps and then you just for some reason get a good threat opener or like a good threat augment, you could easily pivot into this, and that's the beauty of this comp. Next build up we have is the Soraka Carry. Again, this is very similar to the Taliyah build. This specific version focuses more on the admins if you get a good admin, but of course there are many different variations of this board. The only important thing you want for Soraka is a blue buff, because that just really accelerates her, and then just any other AP items will do. Shield Breaker, Giant Slayer work as well. We have a full list of items here. Pretty much on every comp we have this section on items, which gives you a ton of options. Right now, like items, you don't need best in slot. There might be like one required item per champion. For example, Misfortune, that's Spirit Shojin. For Samira, that's Last Whisper. For Soraka, that's blue buff. But after that, the other items, they don't really matter that much. You just kind of slam whatever you have. For Jax, it's RFC. We're looking at the Jax comp now. And yeah, the Jax got nerfed a bit, but they buffed him a tiny bit. Is he the strongest ever? No, he's not. But if you get a good Brawler game, it's worth exploring. And Jax can use all sorts of items too. You don't need Rageblade Jeweled Gauntlet. You could use Giant Slayer. You could use Guard Breaker. Same bullcrap items as everyone's using right now. You could use BT. Some people like that. I personally don't like the BT version. I just like going full damage. You also just play this similar to how you played it in the last patch. Like the Brawlers are pretty much what people go for right now. I don't see too many Mecha Prime Jaxes out there. Moving on to the next build, we have the Sureshot Reroll. This is just Senna Reroll. This one, if you get like the Senna carry augment, if you get perfect items for it, if you get a lot of Sennas for some random reason, it's worth exploring. I don't really play this comp that much. I kind of just use Senna as an item holder into Samira, and I find a lot of the Samira players hold onto your Sennas because they want to use it to stabilize before they get Samira too. So I don't really recommend this comp that much, but it is pretty strong if you hit. So do keep that in mind. You could also do Sivir carry if you get like the Sivir augments. But it's another option that I want you guys to know about, even though it might not be the best thing ever, and it might be a little contested unintentionally by other players. It's still an option that you have to consider, so that's why I want to keep this over here. Wukong Reroll. Wukong Reroll, very, very strong, because you could play him as like a main tank and play him in the regular way you play all the other mech builds, except instead of mech set, you have a mech 3-star Wukong, and him with Bloodthirster is just not a fair combination. And you could do damage, you could do tank items, it both works. If you do damage items on Wukong, like you see in this photo, then you want other tanks. If you do a tank Wukong, then you want damage dealers in the back. Pretty much just all the same bullcrap units that we saw at the beginning, like MF, Samira, Aces, those types of things. But you only go for this if you get a lot of copies of Wukongs and you kind of natural them, and then you are able to slow roll for him. Not too much to say here. Let's move on into the next builds. We have the B tier. B tier, like, I wouldn't really play unless you get the absolute perfect game for them, because a lot of these are rerolls. Pretty much all of them are actually. And unless you get the perfect augments for them, you get the perfect like numbers of copies of them at like the right times, there's just really no point in playing them because there are just so many other playable comps right now. So I would just like play them very sparingly. Same with the C tier. Let's move on into the items. So a lot of different ways to play the game. I'm starting tier right now. Voidson, he likes the belt Negatron start. A lot of people like Negatron right now because it builds all the good mech items. And tank items are just really solid because you could kind of flex into other builds. But yeah, it's just set mech frontline with any backline carry. Cloak can build into like Runon's Ionic Spark, Dragon Claw, Stone Plate, Bloodthirster. Like all those are pretty good. Tier is good because MF likes it, Soraka needs it, and then I like doing the blue buff stabilization. So again, I highly recommend you guys check out the AP video that I released yesterday because it goes into all that type of stuff. For the mech players, it builds Redemption and Protector's Vow, so you have a lot of good options there. But overall for this week, like again, it's just mech. The B patch, it changed a little bit of the power. It's not as oppressive, but it's still a very highly played comp. Like the same, like you could pretty much play the same exact way you played the last patch, except like there are a couple of slight changes here. And a lot of people were wondering like what the OnlyFans is, and pretty much it just tells you which comps are like S plus, S minus within the tier. Because like right now I only tell you like what's in the S tier. I don't tell you specifically what's S plus, specifically what's S minus. So you gotta go on the OnlyFans for that. But honestly, you can only play TFT with what you're given. So tier lists in general don't really mean like that much. They help guide you in certain directions, but they're never be all end all based on your game. Because people talk about like best in slot, but you have to always play for best in game in your specific game right there. And that's pretty much like, I guess, my tip of the day. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We have a couple of more fun videos coming out this weekend, so definitely look out for those. And apart from that, I hope to see you all later. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe. And of course, smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.